This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just get started. First question of the day comes from Kyle Lou, who says this: as much as people will be mad, would it really be a bad thing for Watson to be the game one starter between the new coaching staff, completely different offensive line, and rookie receivers? It might take some time for this team to find footing, since likely both Watson and Sanders will play. Watson doesn't have a future here. Wouldn't it be better for Shedeur to come in a few weeks in? I don't necessarily disagree here, but I don't think people being upset about Watson coming in has anything to do with the long-term planning of the team, and it's more just reflective of the fatigue of the Watson era in Cleveland, right? Like, it is probably one of the least, I don't know if it's the least successful era, because the Browns didn't make the playoffs technically during the Watson era, which, like, there's not many eras of Browns football where I can say that. So I wouldn't say it's the least successful, but it's the most disappointing the Browns have been for a sustained period of time relative to what the expectation was. And Watson's kind of just a walking reminder of that. Like, on one hand, during this era, I've seen the Browns be able to accumulate the most talent I've seen the Browns in my lifetime be able to accumulate. On the other hand, because of Watson, I've seen the Browns lose some of the best players that I've ever seen them accumulate. Well, the best player I've ever seen them get, which is Myles Garrett. So I think just everybody's just tired, right? Every time we hear Watson, we're not just thinking about this year. We're not just thinking about 5 weeks in the regular season. We're thinking about the last 5 years. And I don't blame people for that, because it's been fatiguing. It's been a rough, how do I put this? It's been as difficult of a time for Browns fans as any other that they've dealt with since expansion. Because we could talk about how bad it was when the team was just consistently mediocre, always a 4-win team, no chance to make the playoffs, no structure. And that's objectively worse than what the Browns have been over the last 5 years. But as a fan experiencing it, that isn't as bad as the disappointment that you feel when you see the team do some things right, get some really good players on this team and have a lot of potential, and then they squander it. And I think this is the most squandered potential we've seen. And Deshaun Watson's the poster child of that. So yeah, people just have fatigue over it. As far as, like, would it be the worst thing if he's the game one starter? The one thing I would say is that, let's say Watson does go out there and he does win the job, but he's not good enough to keep the job 3 or 4 games, right? Which means that he wasn't that good in camp, right? What does that say about Shedeur Sanders? I think that's the one part of this. You know, I can understand wanting Shedeur to come in after the start of the season, maybe have a better chance of success. But also, what is Shedeur's chance of success if he can't beat out a Watson who might be benched within the first month of the season? That, to me, is the big alarm bell that would go off in that scenario, right? The reason people want Shedeur to win the job is because they want to see concrete proof of this improvement that he's made. And beating out Watson would serve as something along those lines, at least before the start of the season. If he can't beat out a Deshaun Watson who doesn't look too dissimilar to how he looked in 2024, then how do we really have any excitement over what Shedeur looks like? Because he's clearly not where he needs to be. That's, I think, the undercurrent you're missing, right? Because the way you lay it out, yeah, Watson going in there, playing 3 games, Shedeur getting the better of the offensive line, that all sounds good on paper. but what has to happen for Shedeur to come in second in the season? And that requires him to lose the competition to Deshaun Watson. And what does that say if he does lose a competition to a Deshaun Watson who in this scenario doesn't hold on to the job more than a month? Which is to say, he's not better than he was in 2024. What hope is there for Shedeur at that point? You feel me? That's the bigger issue there. And that's why people would see it as a bad thing, not because Watson starting week 1 is the worst thing in the world that could happen, but what it says about what happened in that quarterback competition. You know, it's not like the Browns are saying we're going to play Watson no matter what and not giving Shedeur a chance to start. They're clearly giving Shedeur a chance to start. And if he can't take it from a Deshaun Watson who's not that good, well, you know, it's not a good sign. The next question comes from Marcus, who says this. Love the show, Q. Do you think there is any chance Deshaun Watson can get back to? No. There's no chance. Guys, we are so far away from 2020 Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson needs to have a decent season before we can even start to talk about 2020 Deshaun Watson again. And like, let's be honest here. At this point, right? Deshaun Watson had that 2020 season about 6 years ago. Deshaun Watson is about 30 years old, so he had that season when he was about 24, 25 years old. If Deshaun Watson's play had never drastically fallen off, there's a chance that he would not be at 2020 form in his 30s. Like, without the allegations, without the injuries, his play could have probably just naturally degraded to the point to where he never reaches 2020 form again. And I think it's time for us to accept, much like Anthony Davis's jump shot in the bubble, that 2020 Deshaun Watson was one of those things that existed during the pandemic that does not. And look, man, I just think it's time for people to accept that, much like Anthony Davis's jump shot, much like 24-hour Walmarts, Deshaun Watson's 2020 form is something that really only existed during the pandemic, and it ain't coming back after the pandemic. It's over. He's not returning to 2020 form. Even if he had never fallen off, a return to 2020 form would probably be unlikely at this point of his career, right? Now, considering that the last time we saw Deshaun Watson, he was the worst quarterback in the NFL in many metrics. Success rate, when it comes to EPA per play, all this stuff. He was the worst quarterback in the NFL. The idea that he's going to get back to top five from that, I mean, it'd be the greatest comeback in sports if Deshaun Watson's able to do it. And you never want to say never, but that is so unlikely that it's not serving anybody to talk about that as a possibility. We got to let go of 2020 Deshaun Watson. The Browns let go of 2020 Deshaun Watson in 2024. We got to let go of it. It's not happening. The next question comes from the son of the son, who says this: what undrafted rookies do you see possibly making the 53-man roster? I think the best areas for an undrafted rookie to make the team are probably on defense, because every few years the pendulum swings on where the Browns can spend their resources, right? So right now the pendulum is fully on the offensive side of the ball. That's where the Browns are spending early draft picks. That's where they're spending money, which means that the defense has to get by with late round draft picks, maybe one top pick, and a lot of UDFAs. So whereas last year where a lot of UDFAs made the roster for the Browns offense, it's going to be in the opposite direction for the defense, because that's where they need some cheap contracts to step up. If you look at the defense specifically, the best areas for UDFAs to step up: linebacker, corner, edge, right? There's a lot of space in those rooms for UDFA. I think Logan Fano makes a lot of sense. Maybe Tyreek Sapp is able to make an impact and make the 53-man roster. But if there is going to be space, I'm going for maybe a linebacker or a corner, because those are two areas where the Browns are most desperate for talent, and they don't have anybody who stepped up. Like, it'd be real easy to make this team relative to the rest of the NFL as an undrafted corner. Like, it's not going to take much. The Browns are desperate. They're basically, there's two players that they're starting and then an undrafted level guys behind them. So that's the area. Linebacker is another sneaky area where I think there's a lot of opportunity. But if you're looking for a name, probably Logan Fano at edge has the best shot. But I say that with Sam Kamara, he is a survivor, man. That dude's been on the roster forever. And every year, everybody's like putting him on cut lists. And every year, Sam Kamara finds a way to be on the final 53. So I say that there's a spot there at edge, but you got to get through Sam Kamara. And Sam Kamara has proven to be tough to overtake for that 6th spot in that edge rotation. So that's kind of my thoughts there. We're going to continue with more questions, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game is going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. All right, let's jump to the next question. BG, the one who says this, who's a non-quarterback player on the roster right now, that if they can jump to being a plus level, from being a plus level starter / Pro Bowler, it would improve the team the most. Okay. Jump from. So we're assuming that somebody is not in plus level or Pro Bowler. So I can't really include like Quincy Judkins or something like that. Who is the player? I would say Alex Wright or Isaiah McGuire would be the two that I would look at for that answer. Again, I don't want to get too deep into it. I've talked a lot about it. Myles Garrett's going to take a lot to replace, and it's going to have to be from multiple players on the defensive line. They got a good start with Jared Verse and Mason Graham, but I think if they want to return to the level of dominance that they're used to when they did have Myles, you want another edge there to kind of put offenses in a big bind there that would be similar to what you had with Myles. And if Alex Wright could become a Pro Bowl player, if Isaiah McGuire could be a Pro Bowl player, then we could have 2 Pro Bowl caliber young edges with Mason Graham, with Mike Hall, with Malik Collins, then Carson Schlesinger hovering over top. Then I think you'll be able to replicate some of the success, if not almost all of the success, that you were able to have defensively with Myles. Like right now, I think they're probably going to drop to like a top 8-ish defense from a top 3. But I think if you have another young Pro Bowl edge emerge, then all of a sudden you're back in top 5 category defensively, which would be enough to carry a struggling offense. So that probably to me would be the most impactful. Maybe you can make the argument Spencer Fano would be impactful. I think there is an argument to make there. There's a lot of people you can make an argument for, but off the top of my head, it's probably going to be one of the young edges, Isaiah McGuire or Alex Wright, having one of those guys emerge into Pro Bowl status. I don't know how much longer Alex Wright is under contract. I think we just signed him to an extension. So like if he could become a Pro Bowl player and we have him on a cheap number, that's even a bigger bonus. But yeah, I think that's the player I would go with off the top of my head. But let me know in the comments who you would pick. Trent Gaming asks this question. Hey Q, do you think in lieu of good quarterback play, the Browns could gimmick up something with the quarterback position? Perhaps some design runs with Green and Watson, just an offense that makes it so that quarterback being cheeks matters less. You can try, right? You can definitely try. Your ability to be successful with an offense like that, it's difficult in the NFL, right? You know, it's not like college football where you can run the triple option some places and get away with it. It's a little different in the NFL. I would say this. It's less about gimmicks when it comes to the Browns' ability to get away with quarterback play that's not that great. It's less about gimmicks and it's more about fundamentals. If you want the Browns to win games with bad quarterback play, it's going to be about your special teams, your run game, and your defense. If your special teams is operating at a top 10 level, if your offense, if your run game specifically is operating at a top 10 level and your defense is operating at a top 5 level, then you'll be able to win games. A lot of games in the NFL, a lot more games than you would think in the NFL during the regular season, at least. It doesn't have to be gimmicks, right? Gimmicks work in college where there's talent disparities and only so much time to prepare for the number of different approaches you can see in college. In the NFL, you can't really get away with gimmicks, right? But what you can get away with is just good fundamentals. So run game, special teams, defense. If you have those three parts of your team, you know, one of them in the top 5, 2 of them in the top 10 of the NFL, you can make the playoffs. So that's what I would focus on. And I think what the Browns are focused on. Instead of trying to do gimmicks and then maybe you get lucky and a gimmick works like the Wildcat did for the Miami Dolphins back in the day when that first became a thing. Maybe that works for a year, but the next year the NFL is going to be caught up on it. Now it happens even faster where gimmicks work for like 6 weeks in the NFL before these defenses get on top of it. Gimmicks don't really work. Fundamentals do, and they always work. You can go back to the times of John Madden. You can go back to the times of Bill Belichick, and you can fast forward to today. Good defense. Well, great defense, good run game, good special teams, you can win football games, even if your quarterback stinks. That's how you can do it. Some teams have taken that formula to the Super Bowl. It's hard to win a Super Bowl with that formula, don't get me wrong, but some teams have taken that formula very far. So when in doubt, if you're wondering, and I'm going to say this just to be very thorough, if you want to win games with bad quarterback play, the vast majority of NFL history tells you it is possible if you have a good run game, good special teams, and a great defense. If you have those 3 things, you can win games even if your quarterback is bad. And I don't even want to say if your quarterback's Kirk Cousins, you can win games like that. Obviously, you can win games if your quarterback is what Kirk Cousins was in the mid-2010s. I'm saying if your quarterback is Gardner Minshew, if your quarterback is old Joe Flacco, if your quarterback is similar to where the Browns are right now, you can win games if those 3 things go right for you. Unless your quarterback is a complete turnover machine or something crazy like that, it is possible to win games like that. So don't have to resort to gimmicks. Just have to get the fundamentals down. And the one thing I do appreciate from Andrew Berry is that the fundamentals have been sound with this rebuild. I differ on the Miles trade, but at least the defense is in a good place. Special teams is in a solid place. And I like what he's done to evolve the run game. So I'm pretty hopeful that they can have some version of that at some point this season, and we'll see a much better Browns team, even if we're not super ecstatic about the quarterback position. Green-eyed Rogue says this, talking of trading Shedeur. My theory is the hype about Sorsby being a possible pick up in the supplemental draft inspired some to start openly speculating whether AB was open to trading Shedeur Sanders based on this trade history. That's where the talk grew legs into a thing. Am I crazy? I would say I've heard from the same sources that this whole thing started from about the possibility of the Browns trading Shedeur before the whole Brendan Sorsby thing, right? This was back when Sorsby went back to college. It seemed like you were hearing noise of this. I talked about this in a video I released on Thursday, but the reason there's always going to be noise about the Browns trading somebody like Shedeur is because the Browns are open to trading anybody. There is nobody on the roster who is safe. Andrew Berry operates in a way where there's prices that he's willing to sell players on, right? And there's a price for anybody. And if you're willing to meet the price, Andrew Berry will trade you, right? So if there's a price for Shedeur, my guess, this is my own speculation, would be a 4th-round pick for Shedeur. And if somebody's willing to meet that price, then I think that's something the Browns would be willing to do, is give up Shedeur for a 4th-round pick. It's not that I think the Browns are calling all 32 teams in a desperate attempt to get rid of him. It's just if somebody calls and offers that, they're open to it. And I think some teams have called, asked about Shedeur, and heard language from Andrew Berry that would assume that he's receptive to an idea of trading Shedeur. Because when it comes to trading anybody, Andrew Berry's receptive to anybody being traded. Maybe the value doesn't line up for him right now for certain players, but you wait around long enough, a deal can be had. So yeah, I don't think it's as connected to Brendan Sorsby as people think it is. You know, I get why people make that assumption. It's a very natural assumption to make, but I've heard talk of the rumor that the Browns were open to hearing trades about Shedeur. I mean, like, I heard that going all the way back to last preseason. And I've heard it at different points this offseason. So it's not really related to Brendan Sorsby in the way that people think it is. And it might catch people off guard if somebody does offer the price and the Browns do trade him, because people think it's just all about the Sorsby thing. But right now, the Browns' plan is to go into the training camp with Shedeur and Deshaun Watson and start one of those guys. But if somebody is willing to pay the price for Shedeur Sanders that the Browns would think is acceptable, then they will alter that plan. They have no issues with doing that. But if you want to know more on why I think that's the case and what the Browns' plan is for quarterback this year and what they're actually trying to do with the room instead of like what people are trying to hype it up into, I had a video released on that on Thursday, talking about if the Browns would still trade Shedeur. So if you want more on that, check that video out. Cottonwood Slim says this: is there a possibility that after a few years, Austin Barber being developed as a left tackle and that Spencer Fano gets moved inside to guard and Barber takes over at left tackle, or will Fano prove himself to be so good at tackle that they would not want to mess with success? Or could it be a time after Barber has raised his game so Fano can be moved to right tackle? What scenario is the most likely in your opinion? So if Spencer Fano was drafted to be the left tackle of this football team for the next 10 years. So the successful timeline for the Browns, at least, for Spencer Fano, is him being a good left tackle. So that means everything else finds its plan aside from that. If the Browns hit on this pick and they feel like Spencer Fano is who they think he is, he'll be the left tackle for this team for the next 10 years. That is what their plan is. So Austin Barber would probably have to play right tackle. I don't see a scenario where Spencer Fano is playing well at left tackle and the Browns move him from left tackle to right tackle to accommodate Austin Barber. it would be quite the opposite, right? So there's that. Now, if Spencer Fano struggles at left tackle, by the end of year 2, it's obvious that he can't play left tackle, and they want to move him to guard after, Elgin Jenkins' contract runs out, or maybe Zion Johnson's contract runs out, and they give Austin Barber a shot at tackle, then maybe that's the case. But I think Austin Barber's plan is to get in where he fits in. I don't know what's the most likely. I haven't gotten to see Spencer Fano do anything physical in the NFL yet, so I can't tell you what's most likely, but I can tell you what the Browns plan and what the Browns hope is. And the Browns drafted Spencer Fano to be a left tackle and to be the future left tackle of this football team. And they fully believe that that's going to be the case. I've heard some really positive stuff about Spencer Fano from the Browns. So that's what they're hoping. Daryl says this: it's been a couple of years, but I think folks forget how much prime Nick Chubb meant to our offense. I say he meant more to our offense, at least as much to our offense as Miles did to our defense. What are your thoughts? I don't think we need to do that, because all that's going to make me do is not say nice things about Nick Chubb. Look, Nick Chubb was a great player, one of the best running backs in his, peak for that 2-3 years. He was up there. I don't know if he ever reached the impact that Miles had on defense. I mean, Miles won Defensive Player of the Year, right? While Nick Chubb was at the end of his run. I think Miles got his first Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. So this is a difficult question, because I don't know if you're asking at the specific time. Like, if Nick Chubb meant more to our offense in 2021 than Miles meant more to our defense in 2021, yeah, I think there's some truth to that, right? 2021 was Nick Chubb's peak. Miles's peak didn't really start until 2023, right? At that point in 2021, Miles was a great player, one of the best edges in football, but he wasn't the Myles Garrett that we have known him to become over the last couple of years. And Nick Chubb was at his peak, up there in conversations with Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. So if we're saying 2021 was Nick Chubb more important to the offense than Miles was to the defense, I think there's an argument that could be made in the positive for Nick Chubb. If we're talking about careers overall, it's not really a conversation, right? Once Miles reaches his peak in 2023, it surpasses anything that Nick Chubb was in the NFL, right? Nick Chubb was not an Offensive Player of the Year. Nick Chubb was not a rushing champion. Myles Garrett, post 2020, two-time Defensive Player of the Year, sack champion, and then obviously the single season sack leader, and one of the most impactful players in all of football when it comes to how you have to game plan against a team. So after 2023, I think it's very clearly that Myles Garrett became much more important to the defense than Nick Chubb ever was to the offense. But if we go back to like 2021, Nick Chubb was up there. And I do think Nick Chubb's prime, because it was so short, does get overlooked. But he was right up there with Derrick Henry. He was right up there with Christian McCaffrey. He was considered better at the time than Saquon Barkley. It sounds crazy to say to people who have only experienced the last couple of years of football, but there was a time where it wasn't a debate between Nick Chubb and Saquon, and people were making an argument that Nick Chubb was ultimately the much better draft pick of the two, because look what Nick Chubb did from where he was selected to where Saquon was selected in the same draft class. So yeah, Nick Chubb, his peak was up there in 2021. Now, if we're comparing 2021 Nick Chubb to what Myles Garrett became, still Myles Garrett gets the edge. He was much more important to the defense 2023, 24, 25 than Nick Chubb was to the offense in 21, which still ultimately had a really, really great offensive line in front of it, and had some pieces in the wide receiver room to help move the ball. It just was not as reliant on Nick Chubb wholly, but he also had Kareem Hunt there too, right? So yeah, I would say I wouldn't go that far, but Nick Chubb's prime was awesome. You know what I mean? Daryl C with another question to end us out for today. He says, can we please stop looking for a quarterback messiah? We need a guy who will make a few plays, sell play action hard, hand the ball off, and not have a bunch of negative plays, especially with what looks like an infusion of playmakers. I mean, if it were only that simple, right? Oh, yeah, let's just get somebody who can do these things. But the problem is in the NFL, guys who can do those things, there's like 15 of them in the league at one time, right? The Browns haven't been looking for a quarterback messiah for 25, 26 seasons. They've been looking for a quarterback, and they haven't been able to find one because quarterbacks are hard to find. You know what I mean? Like every year, I hear some version from Browns fans about, oh, we just need our quarterback to be average. We just need our quarterback to be this and that. And they say things like, oh, we just need our quarterback to be Brock Purdy or Bo Nix or, we just need our quarterback to be Kirk Cousins. Like it's easy to find Kirk Cousins. Like it was easy to find Brock Purdy or Bo Nix. Like they don't grow on trees. They're the most rare resource that the NFL has to offer. There's 32 teams. There's like 16 decent quarterbacks or better in a given season. That's why the Browns struggle to find one. It's a scarcity thing, right? The Browns have just not had the success or the luck in finding one or finding somebody who could eventually be developed into one. Because say what you want about all the quarterbacks that we've had in here. None of those quarterbacks over 30 years of searching, all those names you see on the back of those jerseys, have any of those quarterbacks been the starting quarterback after they left Cleveland of a conference championship team? None of them. None of them, right? This isn't a team that has found quarterback talent and let it go. This is a team that they've tried a lot. They haven't gotten lucky. And I think that's reflective of the fact that, again, give a given season, there's like 15 or 16 good quarterbacks in the NFL. There's not that many people on earth who could play the position. And the Browns have just not gotten fortunate in in getting in position to be able to get those people. It's kind of what it is. You know what I mean? Every team feels like how you do, though, Daryl, right? Every team feels like, oh, yeah, we don't need a messiah. We just need a guy who can make a few plays. But a guy who can make a few plays, hand the ball off well, not get a bunch of negative plays, manage the game well, that's a $40 million quarterback. It's not going to come out of thin air. We've tried a lot of quarterbacks to find a $40 million quarterback, and we haven't found one yet. Like, who's the Browns quarterback you would have wanted to give $60 million a year to? Or $40 million. At the time, the Browns did not want to give Baker Mayfield money, and that was a popular decision amongst most Browns fans. Even the ones who wanted to keep Baker didn't want to pay Baker. It's just not easy. Every year, I hear people talk about fixing the quarterback problem. Like it's easy. Like it requires no effort. Like all we have to do is let somebody play, and it's going to solve itself. And it's like, it's not that simple. This is the most difficult position to fill in sports. There's no position this scarce in the relative nature to how many teams are in the league. There are enough starting pitchers for each team in the MLB to have at least one good starting pitcher. And you're asking guys to throw curveballs, breaking balls, and fastballs at like 95 to 100 miles per hour. And somehow there are like 100 people on earth who could do that. Basketball, right? It's not that difficult to find somebody somehow who's 6'8", can dribble, pass, and shoot, and defend. Seems like every team, except for the Cavaliers, has a guy like that, right? But when it comes to football, a quarterback who can just play the game at a satisfactory level, there's 16 of them. The most difficult position to fill in sports. So it's just not simple, man. It's frustrating as all hell, and I get the frustration, but the reality is this, man, it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. It's not simple. There's no easy way around it. And usually you got to draft the guy in the first round. That's usually how this ends up. Because, again, not that many people can do it. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.